Good afternoon. It's so nice to see so many of you here. I'm Beverly Bean, President of the League of Women Voters of the Monterey Peninsula, and we welcome you to our November meeting. I thought after the election you all might be worn out with the subject, but I'm glad to see the League doesn't get tired of important issues. We do have an important topic, and that is Citizens United and how it impacts our elections. And we have a wonderful speaker today, Nancy Neff. She's come to us from the Clean Money campaign, which I was involved with for some years, and now she's very active, Northern California director. In addition to that, I asked, and she said she is a member of the Palo Alto League. She is a retired nurse, and she is going to talk about the Disclose Act and other things that we can do as far as the Citizens United decision and what's happening to our democracy. So, Nancy, thank you for coming.
Thank you very much, Beverly, and thank you all for coming and for having me here today. I want to ask you first, have any of you read that article in Rolling Stone by Bill McKibben about the terrifying new math of global warming? I suggest reading it. It's really frightening, and well, everybody knows, I just think climate change is the biggest long-term problem that's affecting all of us, and I just shudder to think what's going to happen to our children and our grandchildren. And so I finished the article and I said, I have to do something about this. Oh, I am doing something about this. I'm working on campaign finance reform. And in fact, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. was asked, what's the most important environmental law? And he said, the Fairness Doctrine, which we used to have for public access to media, and campaign finance reform. So here I am working on campaign finance reform. So how is that Citizens United decision working for you? $6 billion later, including $1 billion of outside money spent on federal elections alone, we still have the same president and very nearly the same balance of power in the House and Senate. And I would guess that nationwide, probably about half the people are relieved and about half the people are disappointed with the outcome. But many analysts are warning us not to be too relieved, just because big money lost in a number of races. The already outsized role of money in politics has just been magnified. Congress already spent a third of their time raising money. It can only get worse. Richard L. Hassan, a professor at UC Irvine School of Law who writes the Election Law blog, lists 3 reasons we should keep worrying. First, the biggest problem with money in politics is not that it buys election results, but that it distorts legislative priorities. Besides having to spend even more of their time raising money, members of Congress have to consider what outside money is going to be spent against me the next time I vote against what bill. And most worrisome of all is what the public doesn't see. What gets left out of legislation? What are the small favors buried in fine print? What are the things that get killed in committee? Sometimes a lot of money is riding on these invisible choices. And there's no better way for a lobbyist to make his case than to write a $1,000 check to a member of Congress. Secondly, money does still matter in campaigns. The person spending the most money doesn't always win, but they do most of the time. A Sunlight Foundation analysis found at least 4 House races where outside money may have tipped the outcome this time. And that's not even mentioning Ami Berry's race, where he has been supported by a tremendous amount of outside money, more than Dan Lundgren, and he's looking like he's pulling ahead. And then at the presidential level, the unprecedented amount of outside money in the Obama-Romney race made Romney competitive when he probably otherwise would not have been. Obama did succeed in almost keeping up with the Republican fundraising, But future candidates may not have the star power to raise the millions of money from millions of small donors that Obama was able to do. If big outside money in presidential elections continues to lean toward corporate interests, which it does now, it will give the candidates backed by those interests an edge in close elections. And the third reason to keep worrying is that the dark money, the secret money, it's growing and it's dangerous. A quarter of the outside spending is going through groups who do not disclose their donors. Disclosure is important. Voters need to know that information. That makes it, they evaluate the campaign message based on who gave the money for it. And disclosure also provides the press and the public tools to smoke out legislative sweetheart deals that members of Congress might be offering to big spenders. If we're going to have to live with the effects of no effective limits on campaign spending, and the Supreme Court is quite unlikely to change that anytime soon, disclosure is the next best solution to try to limit the influence of large amounts of money on the legislative process. So Hassan, in his article, concluded, rather than breathing easily, opponents of big, undisclosed outside money in politics need to continue to press for reform, beginning with a desperate need to fix our laws requiring disclosure of all the money spent in our elections. That was published in CNN News. So looking at the California propositions this past election, the most egregious hidden money was the $11 million from that Arizona nonprofit. This money affected the two of the propositions that the league had positions on, Prop 30 and Prop 32. Of course, this was so egregious that it actually got the FPPC to bring a lawsuit. It got the Supreme Court of California to make a weekend emergency decision that they did have to disclose their donors. And guess what we learned? We learned that it came through two other out-of-state groups that also don't disclose their donors. So we really didn't learn too much. It really shouldn't take a Supreme Court ruling for us to find out who is donating to our elections. So lucky for Prop 30 and for no on Prop 32, the dark money contributions backfired due to the media coverage. Another example where the outcome probably was swayed by the money was Prop 37, the GMO labeling initiative. Now, regardless of how you personally feel about it, it did poll with a 3-to-1 advantage in earlier polling. And then $46 million was spent against it, and it was spent against it by Coalition Against a Deceptive Food Labeling Scheme with major funding by Monsanto and DuPont. So that's what we heard on the radio, and if you remember what disclosures look like on television, lots of fine print at the bottom of the screen, poor contrast, almost impossible to read, and once you do read it, you can barely find out who gave the money. And of course, only $9 million was spent in favor of that election, that initiative, only $9 million. So it looks like it's going down, although I recently had an email from somebody saying, make sure they count every vote. So I don't know if all the votes have been counted on that. Previous California propositions where we've had anonymous spending that has caused major initiatives to win or lose are, in 2006, we tried to pass Prop 86, a cigarette tax. Philip Morris defeated that by outspending 4-to-1. Also in 2006, we tried to pass an oil severance tax in California, one of the only states, maybe 1 or 2 states that don't have an oil severance tax, but Chevron outspent and defeated that. In 2010, we had the open primaries bill that Jerry Parentchio outspent 18-to-1 the opposition and got that passed. We had Prop 24 trying to repeal some business tax breaks. The money was about even on that, but Cisco Systems was the major funding against it, and that was hidden. People didn't know it. Perhaps disclosure could have made a difference. And then we had Prop 26 in 2010, which was, that is the proposition that has given us a 2/3 vote requirement for all fees which is the way we enforce environmental regulations and a lot of other regulations. And Chevron outspent 2.8 to 1 on that and was able to get that passed, even though it's really not to the advantage of the people of California. So that's all depressing news. Anything we can do about this? Well, I sure hope so. First, I just want to look briefly at the federal level. There was a Disclose Act that passed the House in 2010 and had 59 votes in our United States Senate. But is 59 votes enough to pass something in the United States Senate? Not anymore. Yeah, it's really sad, but they couldn't pass the cloture vote, and so 59 votes was in fact not enough to pass it in the United States Senate. And now we have a slightly different balance of power, but we do not have the ability to pass the Disclose Act unless some Republicans can be convinced to join in. Disclosure is an issue that is historically supported by Republicans. So, and in fact, Dan Lundgren, a Republican, has been speaking about the need for decreasing the influence of outside spending. So perhaps the tide will turn. Perhaps we can get more Republicans to join. Let me say this. Among the people, Republicans support disclosure and public funding of elections in largely the same numbers as Democrats and anybody else. Polls in California, when we had the California Disclose Act coming up, showed 84% of Californians, including something like 78% of Republicans, 83% of Tea Party. It's widely, widely supported. The difficulty we have is with the elected officials who close ranks, and we have trouble getting them to vote for things even when their constituents want them. The other federal bill that I will just briefly mention was for public funding of elections at the congressional level. It was FENA, the Fair Elections Now Act, and it has been introduced a couple of times, but hasn't made it out of committee. And again, this is not something that we can really expect to see passed in the United States Congress. So without much hope at the federal level, I have chosen to work at the state level, where I really believe we have a chance of passing legislation that's really going to improve the situation. So the main thing I want to talk to you about today is the California Disclose Act. And this is a bill that is supported, it's been sponsored by the California Clean Money Campaign. California Clean Money Campaign is a nonprofit that's been around a little more than 10 years. As Beverly mentioned, she has worked in the past with us, Joni has, and probably some others of you. And the California Clean Money Campaign is about ending the unfair influence of big money in politics. And we did have a public funding of elections bill that we worked on. It took 5 years to get it passed in the California legislature. And then once it was passed, it needed to go on the ballot to be approved by the voters because it was an amendment to a prior proposition. In 2010, that was Prop 15, went on the ballot and was defeated in part because of the 20 million slate mailers that went around the state, some of them very deceptive as far as describing themselves as Democratic voter guide or environmental voter guide, and they would say no on Prop 15 on them, and they were actually, the no on 15 people paid to be on the postcard. The postcard deceptively put on photos of politicians. Say if they're sending them to Democrats, they'll put on popular Democratic pictures. Those people haven't asked or paid to be on those postcards, but they put their pictures on there to fool people into thinking that they also support the positions of those propositions that paid to be on there. So after 20 million postcards, and really not a lot of money was spent on either side of that proposition, but we were not able to pass that proposition. And so the Clean Money Campaign decided that the next thing we should work on would be improving disclosure. So one of the things that will be in the disclosure bill is about slate mailers and saying that they have to very clearly state if they are not, They already have a little disclaimer, very small print that says this is not the Democratic Party or something like that. But it needs to be more prominent. People need to be able to just look at something and see clearly who it is and who it is not. So the California Disclose Act is a bill that will require all independent expenditures to be clearly labeled as to who is supporting them. And the disclaimer on the ad, you can see on the pictures that I've, on the flyer that I passed around. It's not a very big picture, but it'll give you a before and after look. The one on the left is the current law, which, by the way, California still has among the very best disclosure laws of any state in the country. But it still needs improving. Because as you can see on the left, they put the disclaimer in a very, they put it in all caps, which is hard to read. They put it in this tall writing that's hard to read. They put poor contrast that's hard to read. These things are all going to be specified in the California Disclose Act, that the disclosure has to be of a certain type of font. It has to be in large and small letters, not all caps. It has to be a certain percentage of the screen. And what has to be written there is the actual top 3 funders of the ad. So, and it's going to have pierced through language, we call it, piercing through all the committees that it might have gone through to get to the actual donor. And so that is the key part of the California Disclose Act. Well, those are the 2 key parts. The visual, how it looks, and the actual, who is really giving that money. The pictures represent what it would have looked like for Prop 26, the one that gave us the 2/3 vote for fees. And this is a proposition that Chevron and other corporations thought they would use to make an end run around when they realized they were losing on their Prop 23, that they were trying to overturn the environmental law. The Stop Texas Oil campaign was really working. And this is another example to show you that disclosure works. When everybody knew that Texas Oil was behind Prop 23, it was going down in flames. So Chevron said, okay, we need a proposition that'll make an end run. And so that's what this one, giving us the 2/3 vote for fees, what it does. It'll gut the way that these regulations are to be enforced, which is almost always with fees. So that's what the basics of what the Disclose Act will do. Sometimes people ask whether it's constitutional. So I'll go back for a minute to that Citizens United decision. The first part of the Citizens United decision, which was a 5-4 decision in the Supreme Court, said that corporations and unions can spend all the money they want on elections. This is outside money. This is not donations to candidates, which are still allowed to be restricted. But there was a part 2 of Citizens United that most people never heard of. And in part 2, they were addressing the question of disclosure, because the Citizens United, that group that was bringing the lawsuit saying we should be able to have our ad and we should be able to not disclose who gave the money. Well, the Supreme Court, 8 out of 9 of the justices agreed that disclosure, in fact, is necessary and proper. And this is how people can evaluate the messages that they're given. So we have very strong Supreme Court support for disclosure. However, the Supreme Court doesn't write the laws. The Congress has to write the laws. So if we can get the Congress to write the laws, the Supreme Court should certainly support them. So we're very confident that the California Disclose Act will pass any constitutional challenges. And so this is, again, why I like to work at the state level. I really believe that we will be able to pass the Disclose Act. We came very close during this past legislative session. We did finally pass it in the Assembly. We had this finally got the support of Speaker Perez. He promised us that he would make sure it got through the Assembly. However, that happened one day too late for us to actually take it to the Senate of California. So we're coming back. We'll be reintroducing this bill hopefully getting a strong Senate author, reintroducing the bill probably in February, and we will continue with our campaign that we've already been doing for 2 years. We'll continue to enlist. Probably some of you have already signed up in support, and I hope that the rest of you will decide to sign up in support of the California Disclose Act. Yeah, I might as well, since you brought it up, talk about the packet. So in the packets, I'm sorry I don't have enough for everybody. I have some more individual pieces of those. Come to me afterwards if you didn't get one and you would like one. So the page with the pictures on it, that is a two-sider that tells you all about the California Disclose Act. And then the next page is a petition, which I encourage all of you to take, get your family and friends, some other group that you attend, get people to sign up in support. And then the address is at the bottom of it where you can send it when you're done. And then the third page, which I put on backwards so that if you wanted you could just flip it over and fill it out, is the I support form. And if you would like to sign a pledge of support, it just says I support the California Disclose Act, and it provides opportunity several places where you can check off if you're interested in helping. The different kinds of volunteer activities are listed there, and of course there's always opportunity to donate money. And I thank the League of Women Voters of the Monterey Peninsula for making a donation to the California Clean Money Campaign in honor of this talk today.
The petitions can be printed off the website, right?
Yes, the petitions absolutely. You know, besides being just Xerox, they also can be found. The website is at the bottom of all the pieces of literature. And all the information is all available at the website. These overviews can be printed out. The petitions can be printed out. We would love to have people just carry them around wherever you go, get people to sign up for disclosure. Now, I haven't been looking at my notes, so yes.
If we've already signed the petition online, because I've been getting a lot of emails about this and signed the petition online, do you want it again?
You don't need to sign again. The question was if we've already signed it, do we need to sign again? And the answer is no, you don't need to. We're going to be carrying on the same supporters of this year's Disclose Act into next year. So if you're already getting our emails, that means you're already on our list and you don't need to sign up again. But if you're interested in checking off some volunteer activities or donation, then that would be a good use of this form. Yes?
This would be a California law. So, like in the next presidential election, if an ad runs for the president, would this law then apply to that kind of national advertising? Would they have to produce an ad just for California that meets that criteria?
The question was, this is a California law, and so during the next presidential election, would the candidates have to make a special ad for California that would follow these disclosure rules? And the answer is no. The California Disclose Act will only apply to state and local races in California. So both the presidential campaigns and the congressional and U.S. Senate campaigns will not be affected by this. Only the state level, actual state legislature and below. Oh, well, and the governor, all of the statewide offices. Yes?
Who was the Supreme Court member that voted against disclosure?
The question was, who was the one justice who didn't say that we needed disclosure? Thomas.
I applaud your work, and I'm totally in sympathy with this particular Band-Aid action. But I urge that we do not lose sight of the root cause, corporate personhood must be abolished. Corporations aren't people, money is not speech, and I wish that Michelle would clarify the position of ACLU. I can understand that they are protecting the first rights, the first
Amendment.
First Amendment of the corporations. But when will conscience and the need for helping public citizens, I mean, how is it going to resolve out? And I urge anyone who has not signed, move to amend.org. Please get on board. It's a petition for a constitutional amendment to undo Citizens United, to abolish corporate personhood.
Thank you. To repeat the comment, it was essentially that we need to also support move to amend. To amend the Constitution, we need to get rid of the idea that corporations are persons. But as far as move to amend, the California Clean Money Campaign has endorsed the idea of amending the Constitution to change this idea of corporate personhood. So thank you for your comment.
Well, and just to clarify what you just said, there's a lot of groups out there, Public Citizen, Common Cause, and Move to Amend, that are working to make these changes. Some of them are looking to just overturn Citizens United, which I don't believe really goes far enough. So are you saying that the California Clean Money Campaign has endorsed the effort to Move to Amend as being, you know, more, getting more at the root cause, as my friend Darby has said?
Well, the Clean Money Campaign just endorsed it as an adjunct idea. You know, I mean, we certainly, if we had that amendment, we would still need the Disclose Act. We would still need public funding of election campaigns, and probably a number of other reforms. But the Clean Money Campaign has chosen to focus on the public funding of elections and the Disclose Act. You know, and in addition, just said, yes, we, you know, endorse the effort.
I just meant that there are a lot of groups out there that are trying to overturn Citizens United, which is all well and good, but it doesn't really go far enough.
Yeah. So Joni's comment is that there are a lot of groups, including Public Citizen and Common Cause and others, that are working to overturn Citizens United, but that in itself is also not enough. And I agree with that comment. Talma, is it?
If the makeup of the Supreme Court changes during the Obama administration, would they be able to take this up on their own, or does it have to work its way through the courts again?
The question was, if the makeup of the Supreme Court should change, could the Supreme Court bring this topic up again on their own, or does it have to be a case? I don't know. I believe it would have to be a case coming through, but they certainly found an opportunity in the Citizens United case to choose to rule more broadly than what the case itself asked for. Yes.
How large is your organization? Where are they situated? And what's your strategic plan for bringing this to fruition?
How large is the California Clean Money Campaign? Where are we located, and what is our strategic plan for passing this bill? The California Clean Money Campaign's main office is in Los Angeles. We are mainly a volunteer organization. We have something like 40, well, there are 60,000 people who have signed petitions in support of the California Disclose Act, and some of those were on like moveon.org petitions. So about 40,000 of those, I believe, are in our database, and about several hundred of those are very active people. And then many more will respond if we send out an email that says, right now we need people in your district to call your assembly member and say this. And we get a pretty good response. So that is a big part of our strategic plan, is mobilizing volunteers. And what we've been able to do this past 2 years, and what we'll continue to do, is we will, when we have an opportunity to go to Sacramento for an assembly or a Senate hearing, we will have our hearing in the Elections Committee of whichever house we start in, and then in the Appropriations Committee, because all bills go through appropriations. And so we will often have people carpool from all over and come to Sacramento, And the first time I did that in 2006, I was just amazed at how exciting it was to go to the Capitol, to be there advocating, to say, wow, I'm a citizen of this state, and I'm here in the Capitol advocating for what I believe in. And, you know, and with 100 of us showing up in a hearing room, that really impresses them. They don't usually get 100 people showing up to lobby for a bill. They usually get, like, a couple of guys in expensive suits that are just sitting there quietly, making sure their presence is not forgotten. So it really does impress them. So part of our strategy is to bring 100 people to the Capitol for these hearings. Part of our strategy is to have volunteers all over the state out collecting signatures on petitions and growing our support base. Part of our strategy is very focused phone calling and letter writing that we do with assembly members and senators. And so what we do is we might have areas of the state, such as the Bay Area, where we have a lot of supporters and not much need to call our assembly members because they're all voting the way we want them to already. So we'll make phone calls into the Central Valley and to other areas of the state where we need to prod those legislators, and we'll actually call our supporters that we've already signed up in those states and have them call their own legislators, and so it's much more effective. We wouldn't bother with having outside people, calling into different districts. So letter writing campaigns, phone calling campaigns, collecting petitions, those are all major parts of our strategy. Back there?
I wanted to ask you a question. It seems like a lot of dark money is like financing a lot of like lying commercials. And what I want to know is when someone does a campaign commercial and tells a lie, and then it's fact checked, and everybody goes, absolutely, that's a lie, that's not true. And then, the talking heads go on TV and report that the fact checkers say, this is an absolute lie. And everybody kind of like winks and nods and laughs, and I'm thinking, wait, if you tell a lie in a campaign commercial, how come you're not fined? And I don't mean $500. I mean anybody who lies overtly to the public needs to be fined $1 million or more, so they never do it. And then we take the money that we get from the fines and we pay for the legal to sue them for it. In other words, I don't think it's not to me like, ha, he got away with a lie. Even if it's the side I'm supporting, they absolutely should be telling the truth. And I want to know why, is there anything ever that anybody's ever tried to do regarding that? Because that really speaks to the whole clean money thing. I mean, it gets to that, really.
Thank you. So the question is, when people obviously lie in ads and then they're even exposed by fact checkers as lies, why is there nothing done? Why is there no penalty? Should they be fined about that? And is anybody working on that? And I don't know the answer to that question. I think it's a very good question. Joni?
Comment on that.
Okay.
Unfortunately, I think it's more, instead of just out and out lies, sometimes it's just severe distortions of the truth.
Yeah.
If you look at Prop 37, they have this big thing that said, oh yeah, all of these, almost every paper in the state supports. Notice they didn't say endorse. They said supports no on 37. Well, I'm sure every paper in the state has a opinion page, and they publish both yes and no on either side of an issue. So yeah, their paper did publish some support of no on 37. Doesn't mean they endorsed it, and I think that's a pretty big, distortion, as well as others with their doctors from Stanford.
Okay, thank you,
I
Joni.
think you're right, but that's no excuse for
No, I
them to do it.
agree.
And
I think
just
that's how
wish
they get away
somebody
with
would-
it.
Yeah,
So-
I know.
I'll just repeat briefly Joni's comment that sometimes it's not lies, sometimes it's severe distortions, which is true. We get both. We get lies and we get severe distortions, and that's not an area that I have explored. Let me go to the back.
Yes, Montana has had some very good campaign finance laws, and now they're being overturned because at the Supreme Court. So I wonder how the does what's happening in Montana affect what you're doing?
The question is about Montana and the fact that they have had some very strong campaign finance laws, and something has been recently overturned by the Supreme Court, and how does that affect what we're doing? I can't remember right now the details of what was overturned in Montana, but I'm quite sure it was different than what the Disclose Act is intending to do. It had to do with, I believe, banning contributions from corporations. They have banned contributions from corporations to candidates, and I'm not sure if they have banned from corporations to independent expenditure committees in the past. Certainly the Citizens United decision would mandate that they wouldn't be able to stop corporations from giving to independent expenditures. The Supreme Court has upheld limits on contributions to candidates, but not if they deem them to be too severe. And the one that was overturned was in Vermont. They wanted to limit donations to something like $5, an extremely low number. But there are contribution limits that have been upheld. There's a case right now, somebody in Iowa is trying to bring a case saying, we want to strike down Iowa's limits to contributions to independent expenditure committees, but they allow $50,000 or something like that, and there's another, I believe the federal limit might be $5,000 for a donation. I'm getting into details that are hard to remember, and I don't want to say the wrong thing here. But what I will say is that the Supreme Court so far has upheld what they call reasonable limits on contributions, and they have upheld disclosure, and they have upheld public funding of election campaigns. They have struck down, in Arizona, they had a public funding system that depended partly on matching funds. I'll call them triggered funds to differentiate them from other kinds of matching. So the triggered funds would be if a privately funded candidate outspent the publicly funded candidate, that would trigger additional money to be given to the publicly funded candidate. And the Supreme Court struck that down, saying, oh, that might chill the free speech of those wealthy people because they'd be afraid that the money was going to be matched, triggered. So Arizona is going to need to change its system based on that. Connecticut has put in a public funding system that does not rely on triggered funds. They have, once the person has qualified by raising a certain amount of money, they're given a grant, and the grant is sufficient for them to win, even though it might not be as much as a wealthy, privately funded candidate might be able to spend. And they proved this in Connecticut with their current governor, Tom Malloy. He was challenged in the primary by Ned Lamont, who outspent him by, I forget, some number of millions of dollars. And he still won that primary. And then in the general election, he was outspent by $10 million to $6 million, but he still won. And so that's an example to show that enough is enough. So here I veered onto public funding of elections a little bit, but enough is enough if you have a good message and if you have a good volunteers on the ground, that if your message resonates and you have enough volunteers, you can win even if you have been outspent. Yes.
Do you know the sum that both Romney and Obama spent on this last presidential election?
Did I know the sums that were spent by Romney and Obama? No, I didn't. Staggering on both sides. Yes.
I have a technical question about your strategy for getting this Disclose Act through the legislature. As I understood it the last time around, Perez was not as helpful as he could have been, and even had it gone to both houses, they were still intending to put it on the ballot. Is there any consideration now that California has such a strong majority of Democrats in the upcoming legislature that this could be passed at the legislative level and not have to go through a ballot campaign? And do you have any sense that that would be possible, or is it being considered?
Yeah, thank you, Beverly. The question is, Now that there is a 2/3 majority of Democrats in the California legislature, how does that affect the strategy of the California Clean Money campaign in terms of, and I'll just explain a little bit, that if we pass a bill amending the Political Reform Act of 1974, which is what the Disclose Act does, if we pass it by 2/3 and the governor signs it, it becomes law immediately. That is a very difficult feat. The law can also be passed by a simple majority signed by the governor, and that puts it on the ballot for a simple majority of the voters of California to decide. So yes, it does affect our strategy. Well, in a way it doesn't. I mean, we tried anyway, even when we didn't have a supermajority of Democrats in the legislature, we still tried to pass it by 2/3, and we worked very hard to get Republicans to vote for it. We had calling campaigns and letter writing campaigns, visits. We did a whole rash of visits. We took volunteers into the assembly members' offices. We worked very, very hard to try to get 2/3 with Republican support. We were not able to do so. We only got one Republican to vote for it. That was Nathan Fletcher in San Diego, and he then became an independent. So then we could say it was nonpartisan. I mean, we've always been nonpartisan, but we couldn't say we had any Republicans supporting it anymore. So the strategy for this year, I expect, will be to first certainly try to pass it by 2/3. And there's nothing that the Clean Money campaign would love more than to not have to go on the ballot with the proposition. It would be just, almost beyond our wildest dreams, but not beyond. So we're dreaming. We're hoping that we can pass it by 2/3. But we're not expecting to be able to pass it by 2/3. We'll try. We don't. It's not very easy. Even on something, even if everybody supports it, on any given day when there's a vote, there tends to be a couple people out. They're sick or they're out in their district, and it's just hard to get 54 people, is it, or 52? What's the number? Anyway, the right number of people there and voting on the particular day that your bill comes up for its vote. So yes, we will try very hard to get 2/3. We'll continue to try to get Republicans to support the bill. And if we are able to pass it by 2/3, it will become law immediately, and we'll be able to immediately go on to working on our public funding of elections bill. Thank you.
Is this form of the Disclose Act you're introducing, again, exactly the same as the previous one, or has it been changed?
It's pretty, the question is this the exact same Disclose Act that we're reintroducing, or are there any changes? It's pretty much going to be the same. I'm hesitating only because there were parts of the language that were going to be inserted at the point where we got to the Senate Elections Committee. That was the pierce-through language. And so technically, the bill actually hasn't had the pierce-through language in it yet. But we will be certainly putting in the pierce-through language, and most likely starting out in the Senate this time, since that's where we need to do the bulk of our work. Now that we actually have gotten the majority of the Democrats in the Assembly to have already voted for the bill once, we'll start in the Senate, where we need to really focus on getting support. Yes?
Who's the enforcement agency? What do you think of it? And would it address the issues that were raised about penalties?
Mm-hmm. Thank you for the question. The question is, what is the enforcement? Who is the enforcing agency? What do I think of them? The enforcing agency is the FPPC, the Fair Political Practices Commission, which most people don't ever hear about or think about, except very recently. There they were in the news right before the election, challenging the $11 million of undisclosed money from the Arizona nonprofit. So I do feel good about the FPPC right now in terms of their willingness to enforce rules. And the penalties are the same penalties that are currently in the Political Reform Act of 1974, which are a fine of up to 3 times the cost of the ad buy. And so that's a pretty significant fine, certainly if it's a large ad buy that's affected. And what Trent has said, Trent Lang is the president of California Clean Money Campaign. His comment in the past about this has been, enforcement actually usually isn't a very big problem because the opposing sides are watching each other so closely. And so they'll be wanting to report each other if any transgressions occur. Beverly asked me to mention what is going on in other states with acts like the California Disclose Act. And I think I did mention already there was an analysis in 2008 showed that California had already the best disclosure laws in the country, and we are continuing to work to improve them. There are several states that have some level of disclosure laws, but I don't think any of them will be as powerful, especially with the clear listing of the 3 in a certain size font, that kind of clear disclaimer, they call that part, on the ads. So there are several states that do have, especially Washington State has pretty good disclosure laws.
What rationale have you heard from the legislature to oppose this?
The question is, what rationale have we heard from legislators to oppose this bill? They often will cite the First Amendment. Yeah, they'll say there's something wrong with the way it's written, but primarily they just say, oh, it's it's not fair. People shouldn't have to be disclosed like that, or what about their privacy, or that kind of thing. Nothing very compelling in my mind. So thank you very much for your questions, and feel free to come up to me afterwards.
I'd also like to thank Nancy for coming down today, and Phyllis. And I want to urge you all to get involved. The Clean Money Campaign, Google it. They have a website. Get on the list so that when they need you to respond, you can respond quickly. It's an important act. It's the best we can do against Citizens United in California, and it will send a message to the rest of the country, in my opinion. I wish you all a happy holiday, and thank you for coming.